Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to a very, very special edition of the Crack Years. Hey guys, I'm your host, Pertis Williams. I have a very, very special guest with me today, Dr. Eldridge Henderson. He's joining me today. Doc, man, thank you for showing up today.
Thank you for inviting me, Mr. Williams.
Man, I don't even know what to say. So excited about having you here for this new adventure. It's kind of like I need that elder. Now I ain't gonna call you elder. That wisdom that you got to help me kind of get this one moving. I have no choice but to do it. So I'm gonna go ahead and just start running, and I'm just hoping people are willing to join in.
Well, I'm quite sure they will. We have some information they need to know about, especially those that don't know it. And they can learn from it, I believe, because a lot of their families are impacted.
Oh, yeah.
And they are going to be impacted until they die.
That is true.
When they find out the subject that we will be addressing today.
So I want to ask you, Doc, and I tell everybody, we've all been affected at some point by the crack years. Everybody. It has touched some in your family at some point with somebody. But for some reason, we've become extremely good at not talking about it.
That's a fact. You're right.
So if we become overly dismissive of something like this, it's like the whole 80s had the best music, the best parties. It was safe, well, to some degree. And it was kind of like that's when safety was leaving. We were able to leave the doors open at night at one time, and then they were taking your VCRs within a year. So you're looking at a very serious change in the communities. And it wasn't just the Black community, not the white community. This is across the board. And it went so crazy. It was just like I just wonder what was your experience at the time? Because I was a kid.
Yeah, well, during the 1980s, believe it or not, I was in my late 20s and early 30s.
Okay.
And during that period, I had an opportunity to serve in the military and attend college during those periods.
Mm-hmm.
I call the period between 1975 and 1985.
Okay.
And you're correct. That's when things were very smooth. Most of us that didn't have families at the time, and I didn't have one, had the opportunity to attend school, especially the veterans.
Yes, sir.
And during that period from 25 to about 35, I had an opportunity just to do that, attend school on the GI Bill. Things were going fairly well, and you didn't pay much attention to other things other than having what I called your community relations with your friends,
Right.
your peers. You would go to school or go to work, and you didn't worry too much if you didn't have a lot of economic problems. And at that time, I didn't have economic problems because I was, a veteran going to school on the GI Bill and
Right.
working part-time, and later on full-time. So things were smooth, and I didn't understand what a lot of my peers were going through.
Really?
Young guys and young families my age. A lot of crack was out there. I heard about it, but I was so busy and so well controlled because I didn't believe in smoking, drugs, gambling, things like that. I wasn't taught that. And since I've been busy all my life by growing up on a farm, I just didn't know about a lot of that stuff. And then when I started hearing about it during my 20s and early 30s, I paid very little attention to it because it didn't impact me in a direct manner, but indirectly, my family members and others that lived in the inner cities throughout the United States and some in the rural area were using drugs.
Okay.
Many of them were alcoholics, drug users, wife abusers, husband abusers,
Right.
abusing the children, and so on. But naturally, I didn't know much about that because I was always busy and my head was directed in my own interests and not family matters at that period.
Well, let me ask you, Doc. You said that you had a lot of protection around you, so you didn't really get to see it. You kind of just heard of it. You just kind of heard about it.
Correct.
So you were really extremely blessed to kind of dodge that big crazy bullet.
I think you're correct about that. I go along with that for sure.
And that is, I'm gonna have to say that's a super duper blessing to dodge that. However, I think the effects of it are still there. So I'll change the conversation from more of a you have experience dealing with people in that lifestyle to how that lifestyle affected us as we moved forward. One point in that we were talking about, I was talking to my dad this weekend for the eclipse, and we were talking about how when we were coming up, there were certain things a lady wouldn't do. Just not gonna do it, and we were all cool with that. You know, it was like that's what we just knew that it was unladylike, and there was this separation to where, and I'm sure you can understand. Gentlemen are in the living room watching football, smoking cigars, and drinking. The ladies are in the kitchen and they're hiding wine, making different things, and having lady conversations. And if we cross the line in that line, it get quiet. If you go in the kitchen, it'll get quiet. The ladies will quit talking and ask you what you want. If you come out of the kitchen, one of the ladies come out of the kitchen into the room where the men are, it get quiet. And it stayed like that until, I say, the 80s.
That's correct. And the other part is, in most cases, young kids were in the house, but they were in another room being
right.
quiet.
Right. They were in a whole nother section of the house.
Exactly.
Doing kid stuff. And we had that separation. And I would like to say, since the beginning of history, since we men and women coexisted, that's how it's been. But then we throw in the crack years, and that divide changed.
And within a few years, too.
Within a few years.
3 to 5 years, it changed.
And I was telling my cousin yesterday, no, not LB. It was when the men were in the living room, we were trying to hook up the single man with a wife, trying to tell him about the single lady that's in the kitchen, and vice versa. The ladies were in the kitchen telling the single lady about the man that's single out here. And they were working together to build family, community. And they were bringing people together. And if they had an argument amongst those couples, they would get together to get you back together. So when we crossed that line and went into that kitchen and they came out into that living room and those children came into that living room with us to watch us drinking and smoking and hanging out in the 80s, when we stopped telling those kids, this is grown folks talking, within 20 years, 40 years, we broke everything. We broke it.
We did. And now the example is that everyone now is all mixed up, messed up, and suffering some serious consequences due to those changes and because of the crack epidemic that took place during that period.
And that's what I was saying. We're suffering now from that change. And the fact that we don't even talk about it, we don't even bring it up. I've been to therapy for years. Now, unless I'm in an AA meeting, in a group session, I don't hear about drugs. I don't hear people talking about drugs. Now, the one thing that we've avoided talking about is the morality we lost during that time. Like we were just saying, there were certain things a woman wouldn't do, certain things men kept other men from doing. There was a fight for morality. You remember they would say, that's what certain people wear, so it wasn't really allowed anywhere else. That's what certain people do, so everybody didn't do it. We weren't trying to conform to what I like to say is nastiness. We were avoiding it. But when you add in drugs and alcohol and it's everybody doing it, look at how our society changed, like you said, just basically almost overnight.
That's a fact.
We went from a very decent society to when we opened that Pandora's box, it just everything ran out.
And what a lot of people don't understand, Mr. Williams, that this is so serious, and we are going to find that it will be impacting us for the next 150 years. And I can see now that in all areas of activity, economics, training, education, religion, leadership, politics, all have changed because of those years from the early 1980s to the 1990s.
Oh yeah,
crack period, as I like to call it.
And you mentioned the politics changing, and I like to tell people we always want to point the finger to the poor community when it comes to drugs, but you and I know, Doc, there's this thing called freebasing that the richer people did long before we heard crack was ever on the street.
That's a fact. I learned that later in life. Yes.
So now, if freebasing has always been out there, why were they so harsh with the penalties, for crack? Well, what was that about?
Well, the answer is very simple. Because of a planned attack to help destroy blacks, and specifically black men. And in the way they hurt black men and black people is to cause them to have some major deficiencies that would make them look a little different than what we call normal society. So you can ostracize them and put them in a position where you are doing anything you want and everything to make them look bad. And if you criticize them, then the general public will endorse what you do to these poor black folks.
Yeah.
And that is exactly what happened. The government, the churches, the politicians, the legislators, all of them were putting the screws on black people, especially black males and females, and putting them in a position where they were losing credibility as a citizen and as a human being.
Yeah, and Doc, I'll go on record and say I'm gonna agree with you on that, and I'm gonna say we helped them do it.
Exactly.
We joined in, and this is where I wonder: was it so much us joining in, or was it them pushing the joining the narrative? Because I often question: is it something we're actually doing, or is it repeated enough until we do it?
I would say both. Now, many of us joined, many black people joined the situation because we had our head in the sand, and we would say those folks over there.
Yeah, now we do that.
We didn't mention the fact that we had some of the same problems in our family.
Yeah.
If we lived in the rural area, of course, we thought all our people were like we were, hard workers, trying to learn how to survive economically.
Right.
Teaching your children that they would do the same. But those that were in the northern part of the country and in the inner cities that we didn't see too often other than once or twice a year, and when they would come to visit, they always act different, talk different, did different things. And we were amazed, but in a few weeks or a few days, they were gone.
Yeah. A lot of them brought the problems to us.
But we didn't know that at the time.
That we didn't. And that's another thing is it's true what they say, it's fast in the city and it's slow in the country. So what we ran into was the fast life came down here. I was talking to a lady yesterday. She was telling me about her sister. It goes right to what we were talking about when we talk about the separation of the family. It's like the crack years. If we don't, everybody keep asking, what happened to grandmama and then what happened to granddad and then what happened to the uncles? This is what happened. This is it. This is what happened. We were talking yesterday and she said, Her cousins came from Chicago. They moved in with grandmama and them. They used to go over grandmama's house. Everybody was over there. And then the cousins ran everybody off by being on drugs. Grandmama wasn't going to run them off because she going to take care of everybody. But then nobody want to be around that. So they stopped going over grandmama's house. And when we were talking, I was telling her, I was like, that's what happened to my family. That's what happened to my boy family. And if I just use that little old bit of information right there, I can probably say that's what happened to all our families.
Of course.
Was that change?
And let me tell you what happened additionally. Prior to most of us not paying attention to what was going on when those relatives would show up from the inner city or from other states,
Right.
we thought they were doing very well because they came in with a good appearance, dressed properly, had nice
We
cars.
thought that.
Many times they rented the car or used one from another relative.
Right.
They bought used clothing and showed up. And we didn't understand that when those young kids came in, they were teaching our kids how to smoke dope, how to do all kinds of things. And of course, our kids went to school and went to church, and we didn't know about it. And then when we would get the opportunity to allow our young people to visit Chicago, California, and some of the other inner cities, they had already been introduced to that stuff by the cousins and nephews and uncles
Right.
and aunts. And then they started doing that. And when they came back home, they introduced it into the communities, in the schools,
They did.
in the churches, in the clubs. And it just turned out to be a disaster nationwide.
And now let's go back to the rich people, because you remember the freebasing. And so now it just kind of trickled on down to crack. By name, I'll say that's the bad words for it. But it was already there. So now you were mentioning how it affected the politics. And that's what I was telling somebody the other day, is just because we don't see them getting arrested doesn't mean they're doing it. Like, look at the president's son, Hunter Biden. He's like, I'm out here in public doing it, taking pictures of doing it. He like, and I think that gets to the point where understanding drugs, knowing drugs, once you get to a certain point, you're so honest, you want the truth to come out. It's like you're screaming for help and don't know how to get it. And so one of those things you do is you create issues. It's like a cry for help. You've heard a cry for help. And so a lot of people will cry for help, hoping somebody hears them. And we think they're going crazy. But deep down in the back, that little kid was remembering what mom and daddy did. Like, we don't know what those rich people were doing during their sessions of the drug years. We don't know what those kids saw. I know what I saw. And if I saw enough to go to therapy, and I know some of the stories some people tell me, Doc, we need to get Project Humanity's therapy program up and running fast, because
Certainly do.
I mean, man, it's not one of us. It's all of us. We all need to really look at what happened to our ladies. And as I told Lamar's last night, some of the men were doing those same things the ladies were doing to get drugs. Who were they doing it to? They were doing it to the drug dealers. So if they were doing it to the drug dealers, then the drug dealers were also taking part in same-sex relationships. And then they were going home to some of the most beautiful women. Because, the most beautiful girls had the drug dealer boyfriend. The most beautiful girls were always with them. And if they're competing, how women have to compete and men have to compete, how do you think that affected everyone who didn't have that kind of self-confidence? If she's starting to do those things that grandmama said don't do. If she's starting to do it, she's starting to dress like it, then that competition goes to everybody else.
And the bad part about it, it moved down to her sons and daughters. Her daughter at 14 and 15, 16 wanted to be a like mother or her aunt. and she started dealing with similar types of individuals.
Yeah.
She didn't look at the educational opportunities that were present. Many of them stopped going to church.
Mm.
And as you say, there are a lot of them had already stopped visiting grandmother.
Yeah.
Because the parents wouldn't allow them to go there on certain times unless it was on a Sunday for dinner and they leave shortly thereafter. So there have been some significant changes. And currently, down to 2000s, it started getting worse. And now it is so bad now, it's pervasive and is throughout the
world
segments of blacks and the world. And the segment is the rich, the poor, middle class, and the so-called underclass. And the underclass seem to be in a worse situation. Those are the people that are living under the railroad track, in the tents, homeless people that the politicians are allowed to live on the streets like animals. And it is serious and it's getting worse every day. And now with the immigrants coming into the country by the thousands every day, that's going to make it worse because they are going to get the monies that are available for relocation and maintenance that the poor people ought to be getting that's hooked on drugs and that are homeless and miseducated and put in prison and jail.
Now, Doc, I'm starting to think that there is the problem at the top has been affected so much by the crack years that they make decisions based on feelings and not on logic. You know how when you're what you probably don't know, again, protected and blessed to stay away from the crazy. But when you know the effects of drugs and alcohol and it has on a person, exactly, and how they lose themselves, so to speak, to where what used to be a no is now a yes. Like, I wouldn't do this, but then they did it.
But let me tell you what the problem is then and now. The problem now is some of the people are saying, I don't condone drug use. I don't believe in doing it. But their friends will say, well, that ain't no problem. I got some. You don't have to pay for it. You just use what I have. And they get their friends on it one time.
Yeah.
Free, of course, no fees involved. And next week, you go to the same friend. He's going to give it to you again. But the third time and thereafter, you have to pay for it. And you're hooked on drugs, crack, alcohol, or smoking. And all of those will usually lead to one or other to make you worse as a human being.
Well, it's kind of that misery loves company, Doc.
Every time.
So, you know, if you're trying to get sober, you have to get away from the people who you used to get drunk and high with. If you're drunk and high with some friends, you have to get away from them in order to get sober. And I found that to be true through the journey. Nobody wants to see you doing better than them. It's not so much what we're talking about a job situation. It's not so much I'm trying to say you doing better than me in a job. No, people don't want to see you do better with them in mental health. They don't want to see you do better with them in your marriage. They don't want to see you do better with them, better than them in how you take care of your yard.
But let me tell you what the bad news is. Those people, and I can agree with you, don't want you to be better than they are. So they are smart enough to get you in what I call the league with them.
Yeah.
So you won't even think there's a problem.
That's true.
And they will constantly induce you to support yourself through their means. And they feel comfortable then that I have my friends with me, the one I had a chance to attend school with.
Right.
A young boy, a friend I had to go to church with during my early years. Now we all together again, doing the same thing. And they don't think it's bad.
They don't want to see you change for the better. They don't want to see you leave them as if you getting better means you can't hang with them or something. And the way I've always saw it is, if I'm down and one of us, and you know, if you're down, you got a lot of people down here with you. One of us can get up and get out, then they can show us the way. You know, maybe I'm lost, so lost that I don't even know how to get out. I don't even know what the first step is, you know. And it was so many times I've noticed that I'm the only one that I know of in my family, dad's side, mom's side. I'm the only one I can actually tell you right now, honestly, that speaks actively about being in AA, NA, and going to therapy.
Let me tell you something.
You know,
that's not good news. When you are labeled as one that's in therapy, that's going to AA and other what I call preventive modalities, you are looked at as a person with a problem. Something is wrong with you.
Doc.
But your idea, you are bold enough to talk about it. Therefore, you are going to get some help because you are going to help yourself. And others are going to tell you, Mr. Williams, Dr. Williams, I don't believe you're that bad. You used to be that bad. And you say to them, yes, I had those problems. Well, I don't believe it. Look at you now.
Well, Doc, we're doing the crack years right now. That's the show.
That's right.
If I'm brave enough to go get help, I'm just trying to show y'all the way. Honestly, because I'm just the one who's bringing this to your attention to tell you, hey, look, we all went through the crack years. Did any of y'all get help? No, you didn't. So guess what's happening right now? We can't maintain a relationship. We can't go to grandmama and granddaddy's house and hang out and act like we got some sense. We don't trust one another no more. We don't teach the young kids what we know. The kids aren't playing outside. I don't hear kids playing. I don't see bike riding going on every day, not just sometimes. I'm talking about every single day. If it wasn't raining, what were we doing?
On the road, on the bicycle,
every
jumping
day,
ropes, doing things that are active.
It wasn't not one day.
Every day.
Not one day were we allowed to come in the house and sit down and do nothing. So we're wondering what happened. Well, Pertis decided to go to damn therapy, and I need all y'all to come on, go with me.
Well, you can't convince most of them to go with you because they say to themselves, nothing wrong with me. I just smoke a little dope on weekend. I just make myself buy a case of beer every Friday and drink it Sunday and then go to work on Monday.
I don't think it's so much about whether or not you're going to the store and buying beers and all that kind of stuff, Doc. I think that in the back of our heads right here, we don't see that little bitty TV show that we decided to take and take that VCR tape from the 80s and 90s, like 20 whole years, and we put it on the shelf. And what we don't know is we know it's on the shelf. It's kind of like having that secret that you'll use it in case of emergency on somebody, right? Like, I'm not going to tell anybody your business, but I got that secret. If you ever cross me, I'm going to tell it. All right, so that's what that crack years is. That's 20 years of crack right there. It's sitting up here. So when I go and say, hey, I met this nice young lady, and I'm going to take her out to dinner, and then we go in out and dinner, and we both. Now, both of us right here got that videotape. I don't know what hers said. I hadn't watched hers. I don't know. She hadn't watched mine. But when we get together and on down the road, somewhere around, that tape is going to start playing, she's going to remember something that happened to her in them crack years that affected her trust, her morals, her something. The way she views men, relationships, future, period. And she's going to want to get out of it. And the same thing is going to happen to me. And I'm not going to understand why, because I haven't tried to deal with what actually happened to me growing up. So I decided to go to therapy. And that's when I started, oh, damn it. That's what abandonment issues are. That's what self-sabotage is. Wow, you mean I've been doing this to myself? Unhealed traumas. And I'm on the side of, I had a damn trust fund. I'm on that side, Doc. So if I'm all right. And you trying to tell me y'all didn't have nothing and you good?
No, they are not good. They are fooling themselves. They have no trust fund. most of them don't have a job that's providing health care. And those few that have jobs, many of them not working full time. I know a lot of people in my family and other families that have what they call jobs, but they have 3 and 4 jobs.
Yeah.
They have full time jobs, 2 part-time jobs, or 3 part-time jobs, pretending to raise a split family, and everyone is suffering. When you get sick, you have to wait until you're almost dead to go to the hospital, which you're going to go to the emergency room.
Right.
You have no health care. It's very difficult to get it. And many times you just wait and wait until you have an emergency situation. And when you go to the hospital, you end up dead. And then you can't bury yourself because you don't have your what I call long-term health care initiatives together. And here you are stuck in the morgue with your family in a position that they can't do much about it because they're part of the crack epidemic for the last 3 generations, and they can't even bury you.
Yes.
It's bad, Doc.
It's and we're not even getting into the bad because luckily, and I mean grateful to finally meet somebody who was protected. And I guess being on that plantation wasn't a bad thing.
It wasn't.
When you start to think about the crack years, that plantation might have saved your life, Doc.
It did. It did. And let me tell you why. Because we didn't have time for social interaction other than on Sundays for a few hours.
Right.
We had 2 things prior to church: work and school. That's all. You went to work and you went to school when it rained. You didn't go too often. You most certainly didn't go 9 months a year.
Really?
When I first started, I would go 2 or 3 months a year. Sometimes I would go 1 day a week out of 5 days. Some days, 2 days.
Really?
And when I got real serious about education, I would do a lot of praying on Sunday nights.
Yes, sir.
Asking the Lord to let it rain at least 3 days so I can go to school, and especially on Fridays.
Especially on Friday.
Because that was the day they served fried chicken in the cafeteria. My school finally got a cafeteria, and every Friday they would serve fried chicken, and that meal cost 15 cents. And I would do everything I could to find or save or gamble and make that 15 cents so I could have a meal on Fridays at school to look good, to let my peers know that I'm not poor.
Let them know you're not poor.
That's right.
So y'all were struggling with that self-confidence feelings back then too, huh?
That's correct.
Okay. So that's not new.
Not new at all.
That's interesting that nobody wanted to feel poor, you know?
But now the bad part, it was a good part. During that time, they didn't have these schools subsidized food programs for students.
No free lunch.
See, I'm from the old days, from the old segregated.
No free lunches.
You didn't have anything free on those kids. Black folks didn't have free opportunities other than a free chance to get you a job and work hard and make that $2 or $3 a day. And most of us endured that, didn't worry about it too much because we had the skills to get the job and we were good at it. You didn't need an education to get those jobs. You just needed to be alive and over 14 years of age.
Over 14.
That's right.
So they were actually training y'all young to be grown.
That's exactly right.
Not training you. I don't know. I don't even know if the word you didn't know any other way to train a kid up to other than to be an adult, right?
Well, the thing, they didn't have a training session that was organized.
It's called parenting, wasn't it?
They would get you an opportunity by just putting you out there to do it.
Yeah.
For instance, when I learned to drive a tractor, I didn't go through any course. I didn't know how to read manuals and so forth. So I would sit beside a man on a tractor, and he would tell me how to shift the gears.
Okay.
And after a few rounds, he would sit in my seat, and I would drive and practice. And when you knew anything, I was feeling so confident and thinking I knew something that was going to be advantage.
Right.
I would beg for a job to get on that tractor to work on the plantation. And that's the way I got started in my technology, so to speak.
Yeah.
Being tricked into being trained to be a slave. I hate to say it, but that's just it, man.
And I'm not going to disagree with that, because I think the way the system has been set up, it has been training us to be excited slaves.
That's exactly right.
And I think somewhere in that system of brokenness, they got caught up and didn't know what they were doing. You ever heard of someone get lost in the situation?
Of course.
So let's throw the crack years back into it, and how it affected, let's just say, the rich and powerful. So I'm looking at this this article I found online, and it's this Mason secret society guy, and he's talking about how money came into the Masonic temple and has basically taken over. He's talking about how they used to fight to make better men men. I mean, men better men. That was the goal, and we were out here looking for men to make the country better, to make the world a better place. That's what he's ranting out. And so, don't know about how the letter is, but I'm like, it's a very good point he's making. And he said, somewhere we started letting in anybody as long as they could pay dues.
That's right. I remember those early days when they would recruit you to be a Mason. And you had to have certain characteristics.
Okay.
You had to have what I call standing in the community. You have to have yourself in a position to have the right mother and father.
Okay.
Then they had to have a reputation of being a good community person, being a member in the church, in a leadership position. Now, that would guarantee you to get in. And right now, you're correct on the point. If you can pay your dues, now they'll get anybody and put them in. And that'll ruin any organization.
Okay. So now let's go a little deeper into that rabbit hole. Let's throw some crack into this. You letting anybody in for money? So now we're moving up in the ranks faster with money. So now let's just say my dad is a high-ranking Mason and he has all these secrets, and I'm on drugs. Now he's supposed to train me up to be a better man, but I'm out here, high-ranking official, listening to, I'm starting me a hip hop company over here, and I'm pretending I'm a white dude right now. So I'm a white dude. My dad's a high-ranking Mason. I'm starting me a hip hop company because for the past 10 years, I haven't seen anybody but hip hop dancing and everybody dancing, and everybody got gold chains, and these ladies are half naked. And you know how everybody like half naked. So now I'm gonna start me a hip hop company, and now my dad, the high-ranking Mason with the secrets. Well, I don't like how he talks to me, and I'm a Menendez brother. Him. You remember the Menendez brothers, right?
I remember those guys took care of the father.
They took care of him
in a negative manner.
And they got that money, and with that father, and I think they got the mama too. Didn't I think they got both of them? The secrets went. So now, let's say, how many times did that happen that we don't know about?
Thousands.
So those secrets from those high-ranking Masonic individuals, what I took from that letter was they lost control because money, the love of money, not money itself, money is good and beneficial, but the love of money, the root of all evil, you add in some drugs and a certain lifestyle that's idolized, and people will start killing folks for money faster than they ever have before in history.
And the bad part about it, when they do that, they are protected because that same person that's in a position to have all these secrets, that have that money, knows the bishop, the priest, the police chief, the big captains of industry. So when something happened to them or their children, they can pay themselves out of the chain of criminality.
Right.
Kids don't have to worry about going to jail. To give you an example, when I was
Joe Biden's son.
that's right. To give you an example, when I was a police officer years ago,
You was police.
that's right, in the 1980s,
Uh-oh.
we were told that we couldn't arrest the white folks. Listen to me now.
Wait a minute, what?
Say you can't arrest white folks. The police chief told us, called him. You call me if something happened. If it's a white youth, you find out who his people are and you send him home and tell me tomorrow about it, and I'll look into it. If it's a black person, you had to arrest him. We didn't have mace during that time. And the rule was if you arrest a black person or attempt to arrest him and he didn't want to submit, you have to give him the attack test. We had something called a blackjack. You pop him side of the head with it and put him in handcuffs and take him on down to the jail. That's the way we were trained. We did not have to attend a police academy during those days.
Yeah.
You know, I'm an old person. You didn't have to attend.
No police academy.
You didn't have, well, they had one, but
what?
But black folks didn't go to it at the time.
So wait a minute. So y'all didn't go to police academy. They just said go out here and pop people in the head.
See, the thing is, you have to have, I told you, have to have standing in a community. So I was able to interview with the mayor of a certain town, and he got me an interview with the police chief. And I told the police chief that I wanted to be a police officer part-time.
Yeah.
And he asked me if I knew anything about the Mississippi law. And I told him, yes, I know a lot about the Mississippi Code, the legal code, and that I know about the Constitution of the United States.
Right.
And I think I would be a good officer. And he said, if you're that smart, boy, listen now, listen, if you're that smart, boy, you're qualified. And he gave me a pistol, a badge, and a scalpel, and didn't even give me a uniform because I just started.
Yeah.
And he wanted me to start working that weekend, and I went to work in some blue jeans and a blue shirt.
So you tell me
this pistol on my belt,
and you tell me
blackjack.
That was in the 80s?
That was in the 80s, early 80s, when I got my first police job.
Where were you at again? In Mississippi?
I'm not going to tell you, but it was in the United States for sure, and it was in the South.
So
in fact, it was the, I'm looking at the years in my mind. No, it was 1976. 1976.
Okay. I hope they would be training by 80.
Well, they were. Okay. They finally allowed blacks to attend the police academy.
Gotcha.
But the early blacks didn't have to attend.
Wonder what that was about, not having
They had training just as I had training. You found a good person with standing in a community, and you give one or two a job, and you would train him as he would move from place to place and tell him what to do. And of course, a good example is when they started the new black police force in Jackson, Mississippi. They hired 2 or 4 of them, and they didn't have to go to the academy, and they were taught as they worked. When they had a problem, if blacks were involved, they would arrest them. You didn't arrest white folks during that time. I remember those periods, those black people walking down Ferris Street, the black police. They were highly respected. They were those big guys that had good parents, so-called, and they were what I call promoted as the best blacks that were available at that time. And usually the NAACP would force or encourage, they were never able to force anybody to do anything, encourage the mayors or the police chief to hire some black people during those days.
And my question is, you said they were some big dudes.
Yeah. They were not 5'2", 5'3" dudes.
So you say they picking basketball players and football players, basically.
Well, basically, black men were, at that time, there were police officers during the early days were 5'11" to 6'2" or 6'3", usually 185 to about 250.
Basically, the football players and the basketball
That's
players.
right. And you didn't have
Okay.
to have a high school diploma.
Yeah. So I'm just looking at the information because it all goes into my research where I have said before that they try to get the taller people and put them in charge of you.
Of course.
Like if you look at a management team at a company, the taller persons move up faster.
That's a fact.
Training departments, taller people move up faster.
And those that have what we call that complexion that
Mhm.
mirror the executives in the company.
Yeah.
If you were a genius and you were 5'2" and you were a male, I guarantee you were not going to get very many promotions.
Well,
You would do the work of an executive and get paid on the basis of an hourly worker.
you kind of gotta when you and that's where they get that little man syndrome from.
That's
Because they have to fight so hard to be
Exactly.
noticed. So you have that easily promoted tall person, or let's say fair skinned and better looking. You know, those three things, if you're tall, light skinned, and good looking, you moving up fast. Short, fat, and ugly, you got to crawl. So it's you know, those are the limits. You know, those are the two extremes. Tall, good looking, you know, fair skin, short, fat, and ugly. That's the and dark. That's the limits. And then you get all these in the middle. And so I'm looking at management is usually taller and light skinned. And the workers, as you go down, the darker they get, the harder they job. And that's not all cases.
but
I'm
in
just
most cases.
I'm just saying I remember when I first started working, it was 3 of us there. We all filled out the application. They had a young lady, a young man, and me. They had 3 jobs. They had one in the office for secretarial work or computer work. They had one that was going to be a delivery driver, and then they had one that was going to unload the truck.
Which one did you get?
Which one you think I get?
Probably the truck driver.
Unload the truck.
Unload
I was the
truck.
darkest one. I'm the darkest one most places I go. I'm unloading the truck. Highest IQ in the whole damn building, unloading the truck. Because they didn't care about your test scores.
No.
They didn't care about the application we filled out. They didn't care about anything that I said or how I spoke. They were like, she's going here, he's going here, and your big black self is going to be unloaded.
Well, let me tell you my experience during that period. Since I'm older than you, during that period when they made it a mandate to hire certain black people, you were exactly right. I noticed when you go and get a job and you're real smart, you would have a college degree, and especially if you were a female and you were short and fat, they will put you on the night shift or the even shift. I remember one of my friends got a job in the bank, and she was short and black, and at that time had a master's degree in accounting. And they didn't give her a visible job. They put her on the night shift, and she worked in the basement. In the basement.
And in the basement.
She was not seen, and she was one of the smartest around.
Right. And that's the culture we live in. We've decided to accept it too now.
Well, she needed a job. And it was important.
Yeah, I'm not saying that she decided to accept it. I'm saying we have decided to accept it.
Exactly.
We, the people who are watching it being done, knowing that it's wrong, are still accepting it.
That's right.
We still judging by appearance the same way. And I think it has a lot to do with us refusing. See, it's like, if I know your weakness, I'm going to use it against you.
Every time.
So the government unknowingly tried to use the fact that we don't want to go get mental health. We don't want to go get therapy. We don't want to even try and eat healthy. They use all that against us. So let me pump bad food into your communities. Let me teach your kids about ordering in and ordering out, and instead of cooking. You know, let me do everything I can, throw drugs at them. The rappers are nasty. They promoting not good music, bad music. Like I'm finna say something people ain't gonna like to hear.
Well, say it. That's what we need to talk about. What they don't want to
And
hear.
I'm gonna put the camera on me so Doc won't be involved in this saying. When I say it, I'm gonna say this though. A lot of people tripping about Beyonce and that country album. And they talking about messing with Beyonce and the country music, messing with Beyonce country music. Let me tell y'all something. There is a group of light-skinned folks that want to keep their daughters. They want to keep them kids for as long as possible. They don't want them admiring a mother that's butt naked on a horse. They don't want their daughter to see that. They don't want a son to see it. They don't want that type of role model for their children. And I completely understand that. I'm not even fighting them against it. What kind of role model is that? That's a bad influence to children hidden. Yep. That's a bad influence to children hidden. That's a bitch. I don't care what you say. There's a group of people who don't want to see it. They don't want their daughters looking up to a girl who butt naked on a horse calling herself a mother of 2 kids. They don't want to see that. I don't want my daughters to see that. So that's why they don't want her ass in country music. Y'all can take that how you want it, and you can go where you want to with it. They don't want it. So they pushing back. Why ain't we pushing back? That's what I want to know. Why aren't we pushing back against the immorality?
Well, let me tell you why. It's very simple. Black people look for opportunities. And when we see a black person move into another arena or of activity where they are significant, and she is very significant, that record going to be one of the top sellers for quite a while.
Yeah.
We just will accept anything. And they used the same strategy in the rap music years ago. It started out very, very positive, where they would give descriptions of problems in the community. They didn't talk a lot about the bad things that were happening.
Right.
But as the years passed in the rap music, you found a lot of ladies in there doing the booty call, wearing those tight pants, dancing and singing.
Yep.
And later on, we didn't protest against that. And later on, for sure, the rappers start talking about those same females, giving them names as bitches and hoes and my queen, undercover devils, and all kinds of things. We didn't say anything about that because they were making money. And now you find that all of those things have passed to 3 generations, and hip hop people now are considered outcast. Many of them are going to jail and prison. Many of them are in a position where they are losing their influence, and many are millionaires and a few are billionaires. And in the next year or two, most of those top tier guys and the few women that are in that category going to be dead or in jail or unemployed.
That's a terrible prediction, Doc.
Well, that's going to happen. I'm good at prediction.
And I'm not even going to argue with you. I'm going to say they need to repent. They need to change their ways, and they need to do better.
They're not going to repent. They're not going to change their ways. You've had many preachers, Farrakhan and many others, that's been talking to these people for years, say it's nothing wrong with being productive, but the way you shadow yourself and expect others to follow your shadow is not good. And I recommend you ought to change. Be more positive in your music display. Don't be negative. Don't show all the skin. You know what I'm talking about.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Don't show all the skin. Don't say everything in public. Build instead of kill. The rappers now are killing people and don't even know it, or they don't care, and they do it for the money.
Well, I remember when we were young, and I was one of the idiots that was right out there. That's why I'm here now, repenting, kind of letting them know, hey, I was one of them idiots too, Doc, that was right there saying, this is just entertainment. It's just music. It's not real. We're not we don't need this to ban rap. Rap is good from a standpoint of a person who liked it, not from a person who understood the power of the word, person who understood the effects of the words and minds and reality, the effects of the generation behind you, the effects on morality. I didn't understand any of that. I was a young, ignorant person expressing my opinion and my feelings. And what we needed at the time was a Dan Quayle who couldn't spell potato kind of advice. He was there saying, "This is the devil's music, and y'all need to turn it down." And it was like, "You can't spell potato," and we just took that point of he can't spell potato and just called him ignorant. That man was so right. He was so right about that, man.
But let me tell you something that a lot of our viewers and listeners probably will pick up in just a few minutes. What is the title of our topic today?
The crack years.
Listen to this, which a lot of people will realize. Those very people we're talking about are descendants of the crack year.
They are.
Their mothers and fathers were crack users.
Mm-hmm.
Their brothers and sisters, their uncles and aunts, in many cases, were crack users. They are the reproduction units of those people. They have no morals. They didn't see anything taught in their close environment that was positive, where they saw the father whip the mother engaging in crack, prostitution, sitting at home on welfare, no husband, 5, 10, 11 children out of wedlock, and didn't raise any of them, give them to the grandmother because she is out there on crack. And those grandmothers, old and sick, couldn't raise the children.
No.
Didn't even know whether they were at home at night or not. On and on and on to today. And those young people now are going to be the new leaders in our communities worldwide. And that's why I always talk to you all, and you all don't like to hear it, that you better get ready for World War III,
You say that.
War III, Part 1 and Part 2, because it's going to happen, and it is happening. And now I tell you this, that in the next 6 years, certain people in America are going to be lined up and put in relocation camps, not literally, but they're going to be gerrymandered out of society, and they'll be put in a corner in this city, in this county. They're not going to have voting rights. They're not going to have rights of leadership because the new immigrants are going to replace over 90% of the black people in America, and we're going to be worse off than we were in slavery. That's a fact, and most of you all don't want to hear it. You don't believe it.
No, it's not so much that
it's going to happen.
It's not so much that I don't believe it, and hearing bad things. We're doing the crack years, Doc.
That's right.
So I'm kind of used to that. I think that you're right. I've been to California, and I'm wondering, what are they talking about when they say we're getting rid of the Hispanics? I'm like, avocados don't come from Mexico. First off, they coming from California. I said, they out there 10 for $1. It's none but Hispanics out there, none but Hispanic communities out there. We need these people. However, we, the people, have so much separation going on. We can't see that the division that's in place is to keep us poor. The unity put in place would have us prosperous. So I'm fighting for man rights. I'm fighting for heterosexual rights. I'm fighting for black rights. I'm fighting for Black Lives Matter. And guess what? While you're fighting for those, the Hispanic brother down the street needs your help. And you're not willing to help him, but he needs your help. That white lady needs your help. Hey, you know what? That white dude right there needs your help too. Because just like you, all of y'all want the same thing: better paying jobs. You want health care. You want better schools for your kids. You want the streets fixed. You want the community to thrive. So when you talk to the people as individuals, we all want the same thing, but for some reason we're all on different teams fighting for it.
Well, the problem is that there's no one hearing us. Who cares about the Hispanics and the blacks? Because the people that make the rule, Dr. Williams, going to say, we are tired of these Negroes. We're going to give our new people, the Hispanics and the other minorities, the opportunity to replace the blacks that used to work. When I was a young man, 15, 16, 17,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the black young guys that attended college would come home during the summer and they would go to a location in Jackson and other places and get a job to move to California or New York City.
Get the job to move.
Yeah, and move to those areas during the summer and work in the orange groves in Florida, in California,
Really?
work in the hotels in New York and so forth.
We was going to that.
That's what the black young people were doing. Now, if you go to the hotels and the farms in California and other places, you don't see a lot of black folks in there.
You don't see none.
You find Hispanics with those jobs. So white folks knows that black folks are arrogant. If you don't pay them a good salary, they might decide to demonstrate or do a boycott of you or do a sit-in. So we're going to be through with these black folks. We're going to give these Hispanics a job because they're making $2 an hour in Mexico and other places or less, and we could pay them less than a minimum wage here, and they'll work 16 hours a day. So we're going to get this new group to come in and disband and deny blacks an opportunity, keep them hooked on false things like drugs, alcohol, and we're going to make sure that we put them on that non-mentioned reservation and relocation camps.
He said,
we're going to do it here, whether you know it or not, because most of you are not paying attention. And when you know anything, there will be no significant blacks in America. Now, there will always be about 10%, but 90% of the black people in America, starting after December the 31st, 2029, going to be ruled every year less and less significant as human being through the court system, through the policies that are being made on a local state.
You know I'm not going to allow that, Doc.
Well, I hope you don't.
You know I ain't going to allow that.
I hope you don't, sir.
First, I got to deal with one problem at a time. That is a issue. However, easily fixed. Trust me when I say.
Fix it then. Fix it.
The first step that I'm seeing now is when God gave me the plans 3 years ago, it was for this problem. And I know we discussed that earlier.
We did.
Ain't that kind of reverse?
We did.
Like, don't you have a problem first and then you find the solution? Well, that's how I know it's from God. I'm like, I got these plans. What are they for? I'm thinking, save the world plans. That's the only thing I know. I'm Project Humanity. So that's what this got to be for, right? Well, lo and behold, now that this has been given to me, this opportunity, this responsibility, it's like, you got to deal with the crack years, man. And I'm like, how am I going to deal with it? And it's like, I gave you the plans already. So
let me tell you something. I hate to intervene, but Mr. Williams, if you have been given a plan, that means you have been designated by God, or what I call the maker of mankind, to provide a significant role in this community and change things. You are considered, and I don't want to say it because you don't want to hear it.
I don't want to hear it.
You are considered
pathetic.
No,
pathetic.
As a prophet, and most people are not going to listen to you until after it's too late.
Well,
but you need to continue to do what you've been given by God and endure the hardships and the hard times you're going to get from your peers and continue to fight.
I'm going to tell you something, Doc. I don't like the words like prophet and stuff because that kind of
I know you don't like it, but I'm just telling you what you are.
I just kind of, I'll say this. LeBron James is not considered the best basketball player just because he woke up one day and decided, I want to play basketball. and went and tried out and never practiced. You feel me? He practiced to play basketball. He got up, lift weights, jumped. He did everything he needed to do. And now he's considered the best basketball player of all time. Now, for me, during COVID, my whole life, I've been searching for God, seeking God, studying God stuff, doing God stuff, fall down and, being man stuff too now. I live in man world, but I have always had a passion for studying God, seeking the kingdom, trying to find out, is it real or is it Memorex? Is this real or is this a joke? So I've spent a lot of time studying. So when people say, you think you know more than me about spirituality? Well, maybe I do. LeBron James knows more than your ass about basketball, don't he?
Because he practiced.
Because and did you say anything when he said he could beat that ass in basketball? You didn't say nothing.
But see, they don't think about the time when he and the others were young boys where they would get out of their house after school, after they would do the homework, and shoot 1,000 baskets.
Right.
And say, I'm not going to stop practicing until I make 10 out of 12. Then I'm going to go to bed. By that time it's midnight. Then many of them would get up early in the morning.
Do it again.
And run 2 or 3 miles, practice again, shoot 500, and then go to school.
And so if he had that kind of dedication to get where he is, people don't know that during COVID, while y'all were, well, a lot of people, I ain't saying you personally, but a lot of people up trying to get back to normal. I was up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning studying spiritual law. And my mama thought I was crazy because at 12 and 1 o'clock at night, my studying hadn't changed. And I mean, for over a year, it was, she's listening to me, listening to these audiobooks, and she's thinking I'm going crazy.
That's correct.
But I got them on repeat. So I'm taking breaks, but they on repeat. And so when you spend that kind of time studying, you remember. And once you remember, it's kind of like a song. And we're going to wrap it on up, Doc. I know you said you got somewhere to go. But I tell people all the time, don't tell me you read 1,000 books. Tell me you read 1,000 books 1,000 times. Because how long did it take you to learn that song you sing it in your head? How many times did you have to hear that song before you could sing it word for word back? So that's what I did with spiritual law and studying and my spiritual journey. It wasn't just I found this out. It was, wow, I found this out. Now let me repeat it and practice it and test it and test it and practice it and test it and see if it works.
Let me tell you something that you just forgotten, Mr. Williams.
It worked.
Your mother helped you and you didn't even know it. Guess what she was saying? Lord, something wrong with this boy. Help him out. Say, I want you to protect him. Put him in a shadow of protection. Say, something wrong with him. He's staying up all night listening to that mess. Listen, I know these old folks. I'm one of them. Say, something got to happen to this boy. Lord bless him. He's losing his mind up in there. He's not working. His money not right.
Oh, no.
He's staying.
Money's right. I'm working.
I'll give you an example of some. See, you were different. You had that big old savings account there and all that other
stuff. God with me.
Yeah, he was with you. But
saving my siren
list. Different. But I'm talking about the average Joe Blow during COVID that didn't have a lot going for him when he wasn't working. Because he didn't have the skills to stay at home and work on the computer and get paid. He just got those free checks for a little while, and now they are gone. He still doesn't have any skills. He didn't improve himself when he was sitting at home like you did. He has no visions, and now he can't get a job because he cannot compete.
Yeah.
His mother wasn't there working with him as yours was silently working with you and praying for your protection and deliverance.
I'll agree with that. And I go on and say, I'm starting to learn to communicate better with my elders because I don't know, like that disconnect that we talk about during the crack years, that separation is such a bad separation. Our communication is flawed now. Everything is an attack. Everything is an attack. You trying to call me dumb. You trying to mess with me. You think I'm stupid. You ain't man. And all some people are just trying to do is help you.
That's right. Now, let me tell you something. Is your mother still alive?
Yes, sir.
Is she close by?
Yes, sir.
Let me tell you what I want.
Where you think I had to go after the divorce, Doc? You know,
let me tell you what I want you to do. When you see your mother again, matter of fact, you call her and say, Mother, I want to see you. I want to talk to you. When you see her, don't say anything. You just run and grab her and whisper in her ear, Mother, I thank you. She's going to be surprised. What are you thanking me for? And you tell her, you didn't know it, but you saved my life. And then you tell her what someone told you, and I'm telling you to do it. She will never forget it, and she'll be 100% for the next 10 years in your corner.
Well, I'm going to do that, Doc.
Do that. Surprise her now.
I'm going to do that because I need it in my corner. She's a special corner kind of person.
Of course.
So, you know, getting her in your corner is like I was just saying, that disconnect from the generations. It's hard for me to understand, are you supporting me or criticizing? And I don't want to have that feeling. So, you know, that's one of the reasons why I do what I do here.
She was supporting you.
Yeah.
Even though she didn't tell you.
Sounding like she criticizing.
She was disappointed in you. But she said to herself, I'm going to take my boy. I'm going to give him an opportunity to get himself together. And at the same time, I'm going to pray for him. That's what she was saying. That's
what she was doing. Hey, Doc, it's been over a little bit over an hour, and I don't want to hold you. I know you got something to do. So what we're going to do is I'm going to wrap it up now. We went live, but I've been getting all these warnings because I'm trying to do it differently over here. So I'm going to reload this feed later on today without the glitches, straight up. So we did this live. I hope you guys got a chance to see it and listen to it. I hope it came through, but I did want to go live with Doc. That's my guy. And I was hoping that this conversation let's start getting it out here faster and faster every time. Further and further it needs to go. And next time Doc's here, we're not gonna avoid the crack talking. Doc had a very blessed experience, and I mean, wow, you're one of the few people that I'm gonna say, damn it, did the plantation save you, Doc?
It did. But I didn't know it at the time. It did, Doc.
Did the plantation save you from the crack years, man?
And when people hear it, they tell me I'm a fool. Don't ever say that plantation saved you, boy. That's what they tell me. They say, you have lost your mind.
I'm gonna say, dude, that plantation saved you. Because what we finna talk about in the next couple of weeks on this the crack years is terrible. And you didn't get to see any of it. That is a true blessing. I don't care what nobody say. That's a plantation saving you. Because going to the city, you know how you've heard 1,000 times how people say money give you more problems. Some of the poorest people in the world are happiest people in the world.
It shouldn't impact me because I didn't have any money.
Yeah.
I didn't have any money during those periods. I call those development periods. If I got $2 or $3, I had to spend.
Yeah.
I was living from check to check.
You just said from pennies to pennies.
Matter of fact, some of the time I didn't even have a check. Worked on cash.
So from nickel.
Make $5, you go and spend $5 paying your bills.
But hey, tomorrow's another day.
Mess, Doc. I survived that.
Tomorrow's another day, though. You know, I think at some point we got to where we need our storehouse full, so that we know we eating tomorrow. All right, that's the wrap right there. It's telling us get on out of here. But I guess the storehouse needs to be full so we can sleep good.
That's right.
But if we sleeping good, are we motivated to get up tomorrow?
No. Most not.
So maybe we need to live check to check or day to day. And I ain't trying to do that either. So let me take that back, guy. That is not what we want. We want a very prosperous life, but we want to take what's in the storehouse and share it with the others so that we all can go further, faster. And I'm a firm believer that if we start healing, especially with this situation we're dealing with now with these crack years, We can definitely make a big change. Not in the 300 years Doc's always talking about, but I think since we found the problem, Doc, since I found the crack years, that 20 years of forgotten memories that we avoid, that we don't want to talk about. That's what broke down the grandmama house. That's what broke down the uncles and aunts hanging out and helping the young kids, and you dropping the kids off over here and the kids playing outside. That's what did it. So now that we know what it is, we got these plans. I don't think we need 300 years. I think we just need to give everybody a hug, Doc.
Oh, really? Like you're going to do your mother? Am I correct?
I'm gonna give you a hug too, Doc. Give me a hug.
Sir. All right.
Thanks for coming out, Doc.
Oh, certainly, man. I'm glad to be here. Anytime
right.
you need me, let me know.
Hey, we'll see you guys next time here at the Crack Years, and we're gonna keep this conversation going, and we hope we can find more people like Doc who haven't been affected by this in such a terrible way. But we definitely know we're gonna run into the ones that have been. So you guys be safe out there. We'll see you next time.
Since you're going to revise this show and